All right, Paul.
Exactly.
Are you ready for this?
I am.
Episode. I'm really excited about this show because, I don't know, we've been talking about sales process a lot, so it's nice to change gears a bit. Although the sales process were very insightful and helpful for me.
Are you using your new sales process?
I am working on with my new sales process. I'm still at stage 1, though, which is getting the people on the phone.
You get some people in the pipeline. That's good. That's where you start.
Yeah. But we're going to change gears. So this is maybe the setup will be a bit long, so bear with me. But a few weeks ago, I'm part of this private marketing group, and this CMO, so Chief Marketing Officer in the group, was like, "Man, I hate." Like, I'm paraphrasing obviously a bit. "Man, I hate it when you reach out to a company to ask for price, and the salesperson replies like, 'Sure, let's get on the phone and talk.'" He's like, "I don't need to get on the phone and talk. I just need to know the price, so if it's even going to fit in my budget. Budget's a real thing. I don't want to spend an hour on the phone to figure out that I can't afford this." But which was interesting because as a marketer, I'm like, yeah, a guy makes sense, right? It makes sense. And we're not talking about like a simple thing like $15 a month software. Like obviously these are larger investments that he was talking about. But as a marketer, I was like, yeah, I mean, if that's what the client wants, at least give them an idea of a price range. And if this makes sense, let's continue the conversation. If it doesn't, like, bye. But I wanted to know what your opinion was, because it doesn't seem, my gut reaction didn't seem very consultative selling at all. Also,
well, it's interesting because there's two ways of looking at it, right? As a consumer, it's like, look, stop trying to sell me. I just want to know the price, right? Yeah, I know it's got all the great features. I know it's going to help me, grow my hair back, all these things. But you need to, I want to know the price. So of course you understand that. So I think there's two ways of looking at it. If you're looking at something that is actually a product that has a specific price, that has a price tag on it, I don't know, whatever it is, whatever, product X that is a training session, a training session that's going to last X, and it's $2,000, right? So there's two ways of doing it. You can build it up, like you often see, these great YouTube videos, and they're building it up, and then they're telling you all these great things, and they come and hook you with these great lines. And you're like, oh man, I'm listening. And then at the end, it's only $500, and normally this is $5,000, and we'll sell it to you for $500. And if the person's like if you've listened to an ad or whatever, and you've really believed everything they've said, and they've built it up to a point where you're like, yeah, this is worth $500, and it may very well be worth that $500. So that's one way of looking at it, right? Mm-hmm. There, I don't think you give the price up front. You get the interest of the person. But if you have someone on the phone, right, and they're just saying, hey, look, buddy, I just want to know the price. You could just say, well, the investment is X. But really, what you should be saying to this person is, listen, I can just throw an investment at you, or a price at you. But until I know what it means to you and if it's important to you, I think it's useless. Because I'm not selling you a bicycle. I'm selling you something that's going to fix or create a solution. So I'm not comfortable giving you a price yet because I need to ask you more questions to make sure there's a fit. That's what I usually do. Or if someone says to me, what's the price? I'll say, well, why is price that important to you, right? Yeah. And then you'll drill down to why it is important. So there's a lot of ways of looking at that, right? So if I'm walking into a shirt, if I'm walking into a store and I want to buy a shirt, I want to know the price. Right. Hey, this is fine Egyptian cotton, and it was built, by, whatever super well-paid workers who are, well treated, and these are all valuable things. But I still want to know the price of the shirt. Right. I'm not only going to buy based on how the shirt was made. Like if you say, okay, this shirt is $100, but people were super well treated, and it's really solid, and it's got well-made buttons on it, and maybe I'll be willing to pay $100. If you say this super duper fancy designer sat down and built it himself, maybe the shirt's suddenly worth $1,000. You know what I mean? So, but you still, when you're going to buy that shirt, unless you're super rich, you're not just walking in saying, I want that shirt, right? You're going to want to know the price. So, and the price on the product is very different than the price or the price on a product that is a consumer good or something that is consumer good to any extent, something that doesn't bring value or won't build value, but rather just something that you're getting pleasure from. It has a value, but it's not the same value as if I'm going in to fix something. That's an investment, you know. If I'm coming into, if you're a taxi driver and I'm going to fix your car, your engine for $1,000, but it means you could go out and make $10,000 in that week of taxi fares. Well,
yeah,
investment.
Yeah,
Right.
and I think you know, from what I'm hearing, it obviously, yeah, it depends on your product. And so like the YouTube video thing, obviously that's kind of that's just whole sales and marketing funnel approach that's works specifically that way. And I don't think there the goal is to show I think it's just in certain situations where, like, you know, you have a website and people are like, oh, you know, and like, what's the price of a consulting session, or you know, what's the price of your software, and you have kind of enterprise pricing, which is like contact sales. I think there, I guess, as a company, you have a choice, right? Like you said, you could try to push back. Like, if you decide to push back, I think it's just more a matter of finding the right, like, way of presenting it. I think where that frustration came from that person is more, you know, like when the automatic answer is just like, sure, let's get on the phone. You're not showing a lot of value as a salesperson as to why the other person has to get on the phone, right? My perception as a buyer is, I just need to know if this fits in my budget. I know why I need this. I know. And now you're just going to force me to sit on the phone with a demo that's just all, you know, like there's a lot of perception involved at play there of like sales, you know, how people perceive salespeople and stuff like that. So I think it's a matter of how you present your answer.
It's how you present your answer, but it's also, is this person really qualified? If that president, if all he wants to know is the price, right? So, hey, yeah, I might be interested, but just give me a price. Just give me a price. Well, are they really qualified for what you're going to do? Is this really the client you want, who's just wants to know the price up front? So you need to decide at that point, do I just give them a price? They're probably just going to walk away. Okay, so I'm not. Because listen, I've been in sales for a lot of years and 30 years. And when someone at one point would just say, you know, and I'm trying to sell them whatever product it was I was trying to talk to them about, and I wasn't always the best salesperson, but when I would talk to them and I'd say, well, there's this, there's that, and these great features, and I wasn't asking them the right question, they'd say, hey, look, just give me the price.
Yeah.
Most of the time when they'd harass me, I'd give them a price, and usually it was like, okay, it's too expensive, see you later. They were just looking for an excuse to go away. Now, if I'd done my job properly from the start back then, you know, I was selling TV ads. If I'd said, well, what are you trying to achieve? What's your business all about? If I'd had that discussion with him up front, then he probably wouldn't have just harped on me on the price. Mm-hmm. You know, and if someone's calling you for your software, like you said, okay, contact sales for enterprise, contact sales for enterprise pricing, right? So it's a special SaaS. If you're using it for one person, it's, you know, whatever, $70 a month. You're using it for 10 people, it's, you know, $500 a month. And anyone over 15, well, it's enterprise sales, call the salesperson, right? Because he then, and the guy calls you up, says, hey, what's your price for 25 people? And if the salesperson's good at what he does, and there are really some questions he needs to ask, is say, hey, look, the price for 25 people, if that's all you want, it can be, you know, $500 a month to $10,000 a month. Okay, so give me the details. Well, that's that. Okay, so Mr. Client, if you really want to understand, I have to ask you questions, because for me to give you all the details from $500 to $10,000 a month, I'll be on the phone with you for a week. So how about we do it this way? How about we do it this way instead? I'll ask you the questions, and I'll tell you, according to what you say to me, what I'll suggest as the package. So I'm not going to force you to buy anything or do it. I'm just going to tell you what I'm going to suggest for your needs, if you have needs. You know, and we'll go from there. Most reasonable people will say, okay, all right, you know, this is worth the conversation, or I'm not really interested. I don't really need this. It's my you know, CFO who wants me to call, and fuck this shit. I swore on our thing. Sorry. You know, forget this stuff. You know. So, but at one point, as a salesperson who believes in what they're selling, you have to have that honest conversation. And if your prospective client is just trying to squeeze a price out of you, well, you know, there's 100 other people who would probably want to buy your product for the right reason. Then maybe you're just not talking to the right guy. And maybe that owner who says, oh, I hate when salespeople want, maybe he wasn't really needing that product, and he wasn't feeling it. The salesperson or the sales campaign or the marketing campaign hadn't really done its job, you know?
Right. Yeah, and that's the other thing, right? So yes, you decide how to respond, and you know how you present your response matters. But I think ultimately you're right. Like you have a decision to make then, and I guess we could tie it back to that sales process. You know, your first step, right? You have a few things to fill out when you're entering. Let's say you're in HubSpot and you're entering a deal, and if the person is like whatever, you know, like, and all he wants is price, and that's not one of your criteria, maybe you're like, maybe it's not such a great fit. And then you could decide, you know, like as a company, you might, well, we're not just going to ignore them. We're going to give them the price, knowing fully well that there's like a 0.1% chance that they'll ever sign. So I think there's how you respond, but then like if you should even respond.
Well, later. Yeah, and we have this. I sometimes will evaluate people. I talk to them and I say, okay, when do you disqualify a prospect? Oh, you never disqualify him. What do you mean you never disqualify him?
Yeah.
You know, some people think, oh yeah, there's always potential. Well, those people are the people that are holding on to those people that just want to know about the price. They're the people that are not knowing when to say, hey, you know what? You're not going to be a good client for us here. You know,
yeah.
Not a good fit. And I understand what you want. And I've had some very good salespeople say that to me because I've been that guy. I've been that guy on the other side. I said, look, just give me a price. Just give me a price. And you know, when the guy says, look, I don't think it's the right fit, and then either I pull back and I say, okay, I was just testing you because I'm a sales trainer. I'm an asshole. Or,
yeah.
or you're right. You know, this is not really something that interests me. You know?
Yeah. No, and I mean, the thing is, so
shoehorn your prospect into your sales funnel. You have to. So that guy that you heard, that president, wherever you heard that, saying, "Oh, they always ask me to get on the phone and talk to them." Well, maybe he's just not. He's just that kind of guy that shouldn't qualify. I don't know what his business is, but.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, I understand. Like, having been a buyer, I understand that. Let's say you have a certain budget. Let's say whatever, like $5,000 a month for this, and you want to make sure that it fits. You don't want to waste your time. But I think ultimately the challenge is more that a lot of salespeople don't present it well. Like it just says like, contact us, for enterprise pricing. And then it's like, sure, let's get on the phone. You're like, no, like I'm contacting you for the pricing. I'm not contacting you. If it's like, get on the phone with us, I kind of know what to expect. And that, I think we've had a conversation about this a little while back about, demo call to actions on your website. It kind of goes back to the same thing. Like, is the messaging on your site congruent with the experience that the user will have at the end of the day? Because if it says contact us for pricing, I'm not expecting to have an hour call. I'm expecting pricing. You know what I mean? Like, so maybe there's some tweaking to do on the site as well.
That's very true. So then maybe it should be contact us to find out if there's a fit, right?
Yeah.
Or contact us to find out if we can help you, or that should really be. If you just say contact us for pricing, then you're right. It's like, hey, I'm calling you for a price.
Yeah.
Then you're asking for it.
Yeah.
I totally agree with that. Like if you say call us for a price, okay, I'm calling you for a price. Well, I need to ask you. No, I'm calling you for a price.
Yeah. Like what's the enterprise, right? Yeah.
You're not pre-qualifying and you're not attracting them the right way.
Exactly.
You're desperate. I want everyone to call me.
Yeah.
I'm going to try to close you all. We've all had that salesperson. You walk into a store and or walk into something, whatever, you run into them somehow and they've decided they want to sell you whatever. And you're like, sorry, I'm not buying,
Yeah.
And, I remember being in Italy on the, with a Plaza San Mark or whatever in Venice, or was it in Venice? I forget. And it was, and there's these little guys selling these weird little elasticy things that fly into the air, and they're fun. And, I'd say, 10% of tourists buy them and they come up to you and they want to sell it to you. And I'm categorically, no, not interested. So the guy knows, turns around, goes somewhere else, or maybe, or they look at it, but there's a point where you shouldn't be trying to sell something to someone who doesn't want it, unless you're a shifter, unless you're, selling stuff on the side of the street and you're trying to push everything and that's pushy sales, and if you want to do that, that's fine. But then you're not really selling value. You're just selling something that you're trying to get off your shelf or whatever.
Right.
And that's the other thing. If you say to people, call us for a price, you're kind of telling them we're a commodity, right? So we'll give you a good price. So anyone says call us for a price, they think, okay, I'm going to call them for a price. You know?
Yeah.
If you're saying call us to find out more, that's very different. Then you're maybe attracting people who want to find out more. You know, a bunch of questions. So again, if someone calls me up today, let's say, you know, a CEO of a big manufacturing company calls me up today and says, hey, Paul, I want to know what's your price for doing business with us? I'll say, well, it all depends on your needs. No, I just want to know the price. Okay, you want to know the price? Well, it'll cost between, you know, $1,000 and $250,000. You know, say, well, can't you be more precise? Not really. I need to ask you a whole bunch of questions and find out what the problem is, if there is a problem.
Yeah.
If you even need my services.
Yeah.
You know, all you might need is you know, a quick YouTube video.
Yeah. Yeah. No, exactly. And I think what I'm hearing here is I said there's two things. So one, I mean, if you have a site and you're driving traffic to your website, and then it's the messaging on your site, right? Like make sure that the experience that you're delivering is ruined. Because I mean, you know, and as a marketer, I've done this, not necessarily with pricing pages, but it's kind of like, you know, it's easy to manipulate the end user's process or whatever, you know, like the end user's experience. But if at some point you drop the ball because it's like the experience isn't that great, you just trick them into like clicking the next thing, you know, and that's a bit what it's like. It was just like, if you're just saying click us for enterprise, or click here or contact us for enterprise pricing, well, that's what you're setting yourself up for, right? You're asking for somebody, okay, well, instead of like 200 users, we have 2,000. So what's the discount on that, right? And so that's the question. So if you don't want to have those types of conversations, you need to change up your wording on your site. The second thing I see is I think sales has to then determine how they want to, because it's gonna happen, right? In that example you gave, if somebody contacts you, how much does it cost? Well, okay, I mean, if you absolutely want a bracket that's between 1,000 and 250,000, you know, like, what are you going to do with this? You know?
Yeah. Let me give you another example of that, okay?
Yeah.
Another example of if you're trying to sell the price or you're trying to attract people on price, let's take it all the way to the end of the sales process and they become a client and they're a good client of yours in the sense, or not a good client, but they're a big client of yours. I'll give you an example. I was talking to a client of mine yesterday who was talking about one of their clients.
Yeah.
And they were saying, oh, we've got this big client that represents, it's almost 10% of their business.
Oh, wow.
But they are all price and they're squeezing them all the time. The margins are really horrible. And I said, what are you guys doing right now to try to get rid of this guy? Because that's the ultimate. When you're dealing with someone who just wants price and you're selling more than a price, you're not just selling commodities or a commodity, then you need to figure out you're getting yourself into trouble.
Yeah.
So these people, that person who says, I just want price, unless you're willing to just sell that commodity, you're walking into trouble because that person's only buying you for price or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
Unless you really convince them that you can help them with your services and make them get to the stage where they want to do what your product helps or your service product works.
Yeah, and you're right. I mean, you know, like budget is a reality. There is a reality that, you know, you can't afford unlimited. You know, in your case, your hypothetical case, you know, some people might just be able to afford 1,000 and others might be able to afford 250,000. But I think it's more a matter of like, are they buying the value of what you're offering, or are you buying, you know, the price? Are you just buying it because it's $1,000?
And let's categorize this too. But let's categorize this, Fab, because if they're buying you at $1,000 or $250,000, if at $1,000 it's just some commodity that doesn't bring any value, then it's too much money. If at $250,000 it's a great investment, then you're going to help them get $2.5 million. That's a great investment.
Yeah.
I think when you're selling a service or a product, B2B, usually it has an upside to it, right? There has to be an upside to it. Like if I'm using any software that I'm using right now for my business has an upside. It helps me sell, you know, all these little tools, the 50, 100 different little tools that I have and that I use, whatever it is that I'm paying for, aid to my business and is an investment in making me make more money, right?
Yeah.
So unless I'm selling a luxury item for the sake of its luxury to an individual. In the B2B world, usually you're selling an investment.
Yeah.
Usually. I don't know many people who are buying something that has no intrinsic value, you know?
Yeah.
So if you're selling that properly, you're never selling on price. If you're selling on price ever, you know, even if there's competition, then you need to either differentiate yourself from your competition. And if you can't differentiate yourself from the competition, then you're going to fall into the commodities game. You're going to fall into the commodity game.
Yeah.
Then you're falling into and then you have to decide, well, if this client, or if I can't present the value to this person,
Mm-hmm.
they should be using me over the competition, then maybe they shouldn't use you. If you can't have a connection, then they made the right decision in saying, you know what, Paul or Fab or George or John or Ringo, you know, you're just not the right, you're not the right supplier for me.
Yeah.
Because you haven't convinced me. That's going to happen too. It's not, you know, some salespeople think, well, I'm going to convince everyone who calls me, I'm going to have this magic word and they're going to stop thinking about price and they're going to buy my product. Not the reality.
No, I think where I was going though was by saying like budget is still a reality. Like, yes, $250,000 might be an investment if I can get, you know, 25 million out of it. But the reality is I just might not be able to afford $250,000 right away. And so there is a reality, but then
Can I stick what you just said into a sales process, right? Because if your client says to you, I can't afford to, let's say the investment necessary for product X is $250,000 or service, right? And that when you do the analysis, when you have the conversation, there's an upside, whatever that might be, there is an upside. And then your client comes back and says, I can't afford it. What he's really saying is two things. Either he's hiding some fear objection or some money objection, or it's not a priority, right? Because that's really what it's about. Or I really don't have the money to do that right now. So, well, how can you find the money, right?
Yeah.
Or it's not a priority, you know? My building is about to fall apart. That $250,000 would be better spent at saving the business that I have than trying to build something new. Well, then you haven't, as a salesperson, you haven't dug enough and you haven't found out their reality enough.
Yeah.
Because if it comes to that, and particularly on the $250,000 investment, usually it's not just one phone call or one call close. There's been some kind of discussion and a back and forth. And if you've come to that, and really at the end of or during the conversation, the client says exactly what you just said. I can't afford $250,000. Well, you need to figure that out up front, or how can you go and get it? If you say to me, Paul, I can't afford $250,000, I'll say, is this really a priority to you? Do you want to fix problem X? Do you want to create that upside? And you say to me, yes. Well, then I'll say to him, well, how can you get that $250,000?
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah. Cool.
You froze there.
No. Oh.
Or am I?
No. I think I was just stunned by what you said.
Oh.
Floored.
Well, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I really like that example. So
yeah, no. I mean, it's true. I mean, listen, there is some reality, and that's why again I'm bringing it back to the sales process. Is you do work, or your company, or the company you sell for, works with a certain bracket of client, right? If your product is $250,000 and the person you're speaking to has a revenue of $100,000, they're clearly not the right fit for the product you have to offer, right? And so like them asking for pricing is not even completely irrelevant. It's like, dude, you just can't afford it. Forget about it. Like it's, like you have, and I think it goes back to like what you were saying, these salespeople that feel like I could just close whatever. Well, no, I mean, you do have the type of, an ideal quote unquote client that you need to work with. And it's important to not lose track of that.
Yeah, I totally agree. And it's interesting because, we've done this a lot, and this is my bad. Often when we do examples, we use some B2C examples, but
yeah,
face it, most B2C sales is probably more emotional than way more emotional than B2B, right? There has to be some kind of rationale when you're making a business decision. Now you have to buy based on emotion, right? The final decision, if you have a few competitors, but that's where the questioning becomes even more important, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes we use the car sales example, but buying a Volvo, BMW, Mercedes, a Toyota, whatever they are, a GM, a Jeep, they'll, 99% of them will get you from point A to point B. What differentiates them at that point is usually the emotional luxury part. It's, do I like the shape?
Yeah.
Do I like, changing gears? Do I want it automatic? Do I like the look of the car? Do I like the feel of the car? These are all things that are really not the same kind of questions you'll be asking a B2B person when they're trying to make a rational decision to create an investment, to make an investment into something that will create value.
Yeah.
So where was I going with that? Where I was going with that is that if someone calls you up and asks you a price on a B2B product and they've really done their homework, okay? So let's say now I'm going to totally undo what I just said, okay?
Okay.
So let's say I'm that president who's done a lot of research, okay? I've done a lot of research on the different products, and I'm going to make my decision between 3 different businesses in the end, right? So I've done all my research. I've pre-qualified myself. I know I need product or service X, and I'm calling, company A, and the rep from company A answers, and the president says, hey, I just want to understand your pricing. I've done all my research, blah, blah, blah. Can you tell me, how your pricing works? Now, if it's a good salesperson, he'll say, absolutely, I will gladly tell you what my pricing is. Can I just ask you a few questions to see what the research you've done is, and what it is that you feel that you need, right? Because right there, he'll give the baton to his potential client and say, tell me more about what it is. And then he might find out a bunch of stuff and say, well, according to what you've said, what you would need is this. And then it might shorten the client might have brought himself from stage 0 to stage 4, and then you don't have to go through all of it. He's just ready to buy. And then you're just confirming everything and you're going through, right? So that's another situation. But if the client, if the president, the CFO, whoever's done the research really knows their stuff, and they call you up and they know all this stuff, well, that's okay.
Yeah.
They've done your job for you.
Yeah. And I mean, it does happen. It happens more and more. I guess depending on what you're selling, obviously, but it does happen more and more. I mean, from a marketing standpoint, like that's the whole point of marketing, right? Like to be able to educate the customer to allow the customer to educate themselves and to move along themselves. So yeah, it definitely does happen more often. Obviously not all the time. Great. Thanks, Paul. If I can do 3 takeaways, is make sure your call to actions on your site are congruent with the behavior you're trying to get from your prospects. 2, make sure your salespeople know who your personas are to be able to disqualify somebody relatively quickly. And just understand that if they're just so harped up on price, they just might not be a good fit. If you're trying to be sell value, obviously. If you're just trying to compete on price, then that's a different story.
And I'd add the 4th takeaway. If your client's done the homework for you and you just ask them, well, what's the homework you've done? And they really figured it out, well, then maybe they're ready.
Yeah. Awesome, Paul.
Awesome, Fab. Thanks. Sorry, I was a little all over the place here.
That's what's fun. That's what makes these fun. These fun. All right. Take care, Paul.
Take care. Ciao, Fab.
Bye.
Bye, friends.